I was not a fan of the How to Train Your Dragon series from the beginning. I have technically seen the movies before, but for some reason the times I saw them, they were never in theaters and it never seemed like I was paying attention. I finally gave the first two movies a second viewing in preparation for the new movie, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed them. I think the first movie is a great simple story, sort of like E.T., it's Free Willy. It's a simple story, but it works. And then we got How to Train Your Dragon 2, which changes up the story, takes a lot of beats from The Empire Strikes Back, but it works. And I think it's better than the first one, especially in the animation department, which they were on top of their game. That's one of DreamWorks' best animated movie, probably the best that they've done animation-wise. Then we got to the third movie, and I've been seeing from the publicity that they were really promoting the fact that there's a second Night Fury. I feel like I've seen this in movies before where we find a similar person to the person that already exists. Or, you know, we usually are doing like, oh, the lost father trope or the lost family trope. And even though like this isn't a family member, it still feels a lot like those story beats. So that part of it I wasn't excited for. What I really wanted to see was the growth in these characters, because what's interesting about these animated movies is that it's one of the only animated series that I can think of where we actually see the animated characters physically age in front of us, and we also see the characters grow really well over time with that. Even though I've always thought throughout the entire series that the voices just never really matched up with the characters well. That's just the one little problem I've had with all the movies. In the third movie, we see them growing and wanting to discover more of the world, and there's this big trip that they want to make to the hidden world where all these dragons are hidden, and I got really excited for that. I love when a movie can take our characters into a far-reaching place to find something beyond themselves. I think that's one of the better, more beautiful stories that we can see in the film, and here it's done really well. They also have to move the entire city, which, you know, on paper that's like, how are you even going to achieve that in film? I mean, how does that even make sense? But they make it make sense. The animation, of course, is spectacular. All these movies have always been good at the flying scenes, at making everything seem so big, and they really land the emotions in these movies. And the third movie keeps surprising me with the fact that they are doing these common story traits, but they just do them differently and do them well. This is a story trait that's typical that I like. I like when they just go to a faraway place and discover it. I always think that's great in movies, even though it's really common. And here, they still do it really well. Even though they introduce that second character, that's another part that I like. I thought they were gonna do this stupid romance between dragons, and I was like, I don't always like that. It's kind of like in the dog movie when we just see two dogs fall in love. You know, I don't get that. I don't always want to watch that. But when they did it here, I was surprised by how much I was getting into their newfound relationship. And some of the stuff from the past movies I didn't like were suddenly done way better in this movie. I have never liked the side characters that they have for the movies, like Rough Nut and Fish Legs, and that group of characters never felt like they were defined enough to be in the movie as much as they were. And then, you know, the first movie they were there, and it just seemed like they were there to do one-liners, and then they seemed generic. And then you get to the second movie, and it seemed like they were cut down a lot, and I was like, oh, maybe the filmmakers knew they're not that great of characters. Here, they're in the movie a lot more again, but they're done way better, and I don't understand how they could have made these characters better after this long and after two other movies where I didn't enjoy them. Their characters are just more defined. Is there anything I didn't like? Well, to a point, the villain and the story itself felt very much like a, hey, Saturday morning cartoon, here's this week's episode. It just felt like another episode to a story. It didn't feel quite as big or grand as the first two movies. This time around, it's just a dragon hunter who wants to kill all the Night Furies, and that's about it. There's really not much more to it. Over time, the character, the villain, did kind of make me laugh, and his design, while it didn't seem too inspired, I don't know, there was something later on in the movie. Maybe it was the hair, maybe it was the blonde hair that made me think, okay, this is a little different. Okay, one of the big storylines is the fact that the Light Fury was released on purpose to lure the Night Fury. But it doesn't, if you watch the movie, it doesn't really make sense how they were going to capture the Night Fury with the Light Fury. But the movie does win you by the end. Even though when you get to the climax, I'm like, wow, we're already here. I feel like the movie just started. The climax is really enjoyable. I'll be surprised if you don't get teary-eyed at the big scene in this movie, because it does something that I didn't expect. I didn't see this ending coming, and for people who love the How to Train Your Dragon series, especially kids who have been watching the TV series as well, this is going to be a great big finale for them. So for that, I think the movie, while not quite as good as the first two, is still a worthy cap for the series. So with that, I'll give the movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. So what'd you think of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World? Do you think it was as good as the first two movies? Do you think this one was the downfall of the series and thank God it's over? Leave a comment on my video, and thanks for watching, and I'm sorry that the heater was going the entire time. I can't help that I live in Minnesota.